Was this the worst championship game in history, do you reckon?
I just think it was schemed up for failure.
You don't do that if you're not a legitimate team.
Half the team's already in Cancun, like we said.
There was only one MVP quarterback caliber this weekend, and it wasn't Drake Maye.
Welcome back to the Early Hours podcast. The teams for Super Bowl 60 are set. The New England Patriots will face off against the Seattle Seahawks in their own divisional rivals' backyard in Santa Clara. Honestly, Smales, how does that feel? Because if the Bears, if they had a shot at winning at Lambeau, I think it would be the end of me.
I mean, yeah, it's not what you dream of at the start of the season, is it? But, you probably have to say they deserve it, and a couple of shout-outs. Obviously, Sam Darnold. Number one seed 2 years in a row in teams that were struggling prior to him getting there. Has he had an amazing season? Probably not, but he's a very good enabler. And then Adam Durdy as well, the defensive coordinator. Obviously, we know he likes to be called AD, but big shout out to him, the first British coordinator to make a Super Bowl. And hopefully one day a very well-deserved head coach as well. So yeah, the Seahawks, no. But Sam and AD, I'm pretty pleased for those guys, and you can't say they don't deserve it if we're being unbiased.
Yeah, and this will be a rematch of the thriller, which was Super Bowl 49. We all know what happened in that game, and we'll actually do a deep dive into the comparisons from then and now next week as part of our build-up, so stay tuned for that. But before then, guys, let's cast our mind back to last weekend. We had two games that decided the fate of the two teams that go into the Super Bowl. First up, Broncos 7, Patriots 10. Jarrett Stidham here, he threw 17 of 31, so not quite the playoff debut he'd have wanted. The bigger thing, though, is Denver still proving that it's not too late to be involved in another dire game this season.
Yeah, it was defense on defense, and we kind of had an inclination that it was going to be. It was tipped to be the snow game that it played out to be from the second half onwards. It was neck and neck all the way. They couldn't hit a field goal if they'd have tried. So it was always going to come down to who could, get the stops in the red zone, who could create turnovers, who could force errors. And the area I want to focus on, and simply put, is the thing that decided the game was the Patriots defense. They carried their team. They really did. And they made it easy for Drake Maye. They only allowed 7 points, which granted, I know Broncos, only gave up 10, but in the grand scheme of things, in any AFC Championship, to hold a team to a touchdown is incredible. They disguised their coverages really well, like we said they would. They had Jarrett Stidham in all sorts of tangles and twists. They had red zone discipline. They were just crucially dominant, and they shut down the interior lines like they have all season long. And there wasn't much they could do. Sean Payton couldn't run. He couldn't get a 4th and 1 over the line. He couldn't get his quarterback hitting the zones, and it just didn't work, unfortunately, for them.
The first half going in 7-7 and a really entertaining game. It's fair to say the snow and the conditions killed it, as a exciting contest moving forward. Just punt, missed field goal, punt, etc. So I think it's relatively unfair to judge either quarterback too much. Drake Maye had a pretty poor game, 5 sacks, 86 yards overall from 10 passes. So whilst he moves on to the Super Bowl, his MVP rival, we'll go on to it, doesn't, but there was only one MVP quarterback caliber this weekend, and it wasn't Drake Maye.
We need to talk about his road to the Super Bowl as well. Look, the wild card round, 17 of 29, 268 passing yards, 1 interception, 1 touchdown, but then 2 fumbles. Huge. Divisional round, he's gone on for 16 of 27, so you can see a sort of trend building here at the 50-50s. 179 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, but another 4 fumbles. And then this is where it really gets bad, and he gets exposed, unfortunately. 86 passing yards, so he's not contributed much there. 0 TDs, 0 interceptions, and yet another fumble for Drake Maye. So it has not been a smooth road. And yeah, I worry about him against that Seahawks defense.
Smells, you said that it's not fair to judge these quarterbacks. Oliver's just judged Drake Maye there. Let's actually judge Jarrett Stidham. Was it his fault that the Broncos didn't come away with this dub? I think he might have benefited from a few snaps, but he didn't really get the chance in the Bills game, so he came into this game completely fresh. Was it his fault, or were the Broncos always doomed to fail by the Patriots?
I think it's anything but Jarrett Stidham's fault. I thought he was perfectly fine. I think if anything, he was probably as good as, or even better than, Bo Nix. It was just, like I said, it was a tight game the first half. The defence ruled the roost like we thought they would do. Not particularly Drake Maye's fault. He was as poor, but they didn't win because of him, and he becomes the first QB in NFL history to win a championship game with under 100 yards. So again, it's not fair to judge either in these conditions, I don't think.
And to round that point off, look, he's got a simplified playbook to Bo Nix. So where Bo Nix maybe has the option or the awareness to go off schedule and turn plays into these miraculous turnarounds using his feet, I just think it was schemed up for failure almost. The interior line of the Patriots we know is so good. So they were able to shut the run game down. That means no RJ Harvey. And that meant that Stidham was forced to throw. And all they had to do then was play man coverage, which again, they're another good team at doing. And we saw the likes of Gonzalez getting the game sealing pick, and it was done and dusted for the Broncos back to the country.
Yeah, this game had a total of 17 points between both teams. Another 17 points was shared between the Broncos and the Raiders, and 24 points shared between the Broncos and the Jets in London. So the Broncos, they either ball out or they just don't show up. With that in mind, was this the worst championship game in history, do you reckon?
Well, they certainly contributed to it. Sub 200 yards, 2 turnovers. Both were in the Patriots territory, and then 3 out of 11 on third downs. And we've obviously covered already a lot of the individual key performances from Patriots players. So yeah, both teams just seem so lackluster. The snow was a massive part to play, and that's a whole different debate. We keep referencing all these episodes in the offseason. That is definitely one we'll talk about, is the impact of open top stadiums versus the domes. It had a massive influence on this game.
The Patriots, actually, get this, so they've won as many games since December the 21st as the Titans have won since firing Vrabel. That's a bad call if you're a Tennessee fan. Cam Ward he's struggling. We don't know what's going on in Tennessee. Going on to the other game then, guys, something a bit more exciting and dramatic to sink our teeth into. Seahawks 31, LA Rams 27. Matt Stafford, he's the first quarterback ever to throw for 350 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and still lose a playoff start. Was he just unlucky, or are the Seahawks and Sam Darnold the real deal?
I think it'd be unfair to not say the Seahawks are the real deal. I mean, they've won and, I've got to the first seed by beating probably the other, second and third best teams in the NFC plus their division in the Rams and the 49ers, beating both of them 2-1 over the season. You don't do that if you're not a legitimate team. I mean, both quarterbacks played really well. Sam Darnold it's by far his best game against the Rams this year. We know what happened in the first game, the 4 picks. The second game, he got a couple of picks as well. But like we said last week, the defense keeps them in it. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot to talk about here, and there's a lot of sort of decisions that went against the Rams. We've seen it all season. But yeah, I mean, Stafford was fantastic. Smith and Jigba fantastic. Nakua fantastic. This was one of the better championship games we've ever seen, if the Broncos and Patriots was one of the worst.
I want to cover Kenneth Walker, the sort of unsung hero, really, of the game. 62 rushing, 49 receiving, averaged about 3.3 yards per carry, which in a backfield where he's been sharing snaps with Zach Charbonnet, actually he's took full advantage of this. He sees that opportunity and he's took advantage of the situation. And I think really what was key about Walker's performance and why I've referred to him as the unsung hero is the way they were utilising him. They were drawing the linebackers out. They were forcing the linebackers to sort of fire at the inside zone runs. But then in the same time, they had the Rams playing a lot of single high safety looks, so they were allowing the midfield to open up for Sam Darnold to get out to the slot receivers, the likes of JSN, and using the tight end in the seam. And it was smart play. I loved the use of Kenneth Walker, and equally again, he had a number of first downs for the team. He was quite literally carrying them on his back and driving them down the field. He had the explosive touchdown at the beginning of the game. I couldn't mention the offense for the Seattle Seahawks without talking about Walker. So incredible. I mean, there was performances all over the place, wasn't there? You mentioned Devontae Adams. God, my heart cried out for him. I really did. It's his fifth conference championship game, and it's his fifth loss. So second most losses without a win since 1970 in conference championship games. So it's just a devastating stat, and that was met with tears in the presser, so rightly so.
Yeah, tragic. No doubt who you're going to be picking up in the draft coming up then, Kenneth Walker, watch out. Sam Darnold as well. He is the first quarterback since 2007 to lead the NFL in turnovers and still make the Super Bowl. So How do you fancy him against the Patriots? I know we're going to do a full deep dive into that preview, but just off the off, anything could happen in a week. You've got to be back in the Seahawks, surely.
Well, he's the first quarterback as well since from the 2018 draft class that's made the Super Bowl, and that's ahead of some top names: Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson. So to answer your question, I really fancy his chances. He's coming up against a tough interior line that we spoke about, so he might not get as much out of Kenneth, but we've seen he can use his arm, and he's got the number one receiver left in the playoffs. So I know it's not many when there's only 2 teams, but
that's Stephon Diggs, isn't it?
Well, it could, you know what? He's had a great season as well, if you ask me. So
yeah, no. Again, I echo what Oliver's saying. Sam Darnold and the Seahawks have to be the big favourites. In fact, he made a joke in the press conference as well. He did make the championship game in 2023. Obviously, this is his first as a starter, so there's no reason why they can't win it again. I don't think they particularly need him to be on the best form because they have offense firing, defense firing, and special teams firing, and that's what the Rams essentially cost the Rams at the weekend. Xavier Smith, he muffed a punt, and then obviously the kickoff return, he forced a turnover. But it was the special teams that cost the Rams. It's cost them quite a few times throughout the season, if I'm honest. Also has cost them in the playoffs, but they've managed to get over the line in those games. But the Seahawks were one too far because they are actually genuinely a pretty complete team at the moment.
Look, let's round out this episode with a big question, guys. It's not on the running order, it's hidden. This game, really tight. You know, arguably, I think this matchup could have been better. Then the Super Bowl could present itself. Both teams worthy of winning everything this season. Do you think the championship round games should be a best of 3? Would that be more fair for teams when things are this close?
What a great question. Can worms open?
It'd ruin the schedule. It would ruin the Super Bowl being in February, wouldn't it? But I mean,
it just affects far too many rounds before it. I love you thinking though, and what I do think is it would allow different playmakers to step up in different games, and 2 reasons on that: injury rate and the competitiveness, the stamina rate. You know, players having to play the following week, let's say, but then also scheme. Naturally, you're going to have to adapt your scheme week to week in the best of 3. So, great idea, love it. Don't rule it out, especially with so much change and Rog tipping 18
that's exactly why I kind of
seasons.
thought about the question. Not only does he want 18-week seasons, he wants everybody to play internationally. He wants the world from all of these players. Why not push, you know, the season into the end of March, April, and have a best of 3 in the playoffs?
And his argument on that then is it's only so many teams that are playing the extra games. So actually, from a health and safety standpoint, great. Half the team's already in Cancun, like we said. So
what do we do if it's 2-0 though? Like, do we just play
That's it, it's best of 3
team?
Yeah, you just
no, you get an extra bye. That's your reward.
Brilliant.
Yeah, you said we're cooking here.
Brilliant.
I'm sure the broadcasters would love that.
It'd be less harsh of an off season. You know, we've got to wait so long now to watch, you know, any of our teams play football again. There's only so much appetite the draft and the combine and the schedule release can satisfy sports fans. So I just thought in the spirit of outlandish questions, why not throw that in there? Look, guys, we are 2 games down here from that weekend. 1 final game to go next Sunday for Super Bowl 60. We'll be bringing you build up from here in our studios in the UK, as well as on the ground in San Francisco. Stick with us on socials to see plenty more of that as the biggest game in football approaches. We'll see you next week.